ahead and start the recording. There we go. So with regards to that final project and the workload that it takes, all I really have to go on is past performance and comments that I've received from this class, and we've been doing this for quite a while now, so I think we have a pretty good handle on it. The final project can be a lot. However, the final project, you'll actually have almost 2 weeks to do it, depending on how you use your time between our review of the preliminary plan and the final one. So depends on how much you want to redo things or redesign things. If your design is pretty well locked in when you do the preliminary presentation on week number, I think I'm checking my syllabus here. If on week number 6, when we do a group critique of your concept design, if you feel pretty confident about, or if you're pretty tight on that design at that week, then you have 2 weeks to get it finished. So I think it's a good amount of time. Even if you started over again, I think 2 weeks is enough time to start over again. If you got a lot of criticism on something, you felt you had to redo a lot of things, I think you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Good question. We're going to go over homework assignments here in just a moment. Before I do that, though, any other questions that maybe you want to get right off the top?
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Could you repeat where the site plan is? I was trying to look for it as I was working, and I just couldn't find it.
No problem. That's part of our lecture and studio work tonight. So I will show you exactly where that is, and so much more with regards to the project, because we're gonna dive in deep tonight.
Okay.
Great, super. Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to start off by reviewing some homework assignments. So I give some feedback in a group setting to highlight some of the things that I think some of you did well, highlight some of the things that need some improvements, and then of course I will grade your homework over the next couple of days with specific feedback marked up on each of your drawings for you to use as we move forward. Thinking about the final project, this even though the design process is iterative, our work is building in kind of a linear fashion. I'm giving you the steps that you need along the way. So if you keep up with them on a week-to-week basis, there shouldn't be too heavy of a lift for you from 1 week to the next as we move towards a final landscape plan. So we're going to review our homework assignments. So we're going to go into lecture. We're going to talk about client interviewing techniques and the preparation of a program statement. And then after that, we are going to get an introduction to the project site, learn a little bit about that, and then we're all going to participate in a client interview where I am going to stand in as the client, and you are going to interview me to get the information that you need to design the landscape. And with a break somewhere in the middle there for a little bit of a pause to refresh. So let's get into our homework review. Here we go. Is everyone seeing a drawing? Great. All right. So we'll talk about a little bit of a range of things as we go over some homework assignments. Looking at a drawing like this, be mindful of how you take photographs. I think this is acceptable. I think the lighting could be a little bit brighter. This is rather indirect lighting, but it could be slightly brighter. So just be aware of the room that you're in. Indirect daylight is best, but something with an artificial light is okay as well. When I'm giving you feedback on your assignments, I am looking primarily for completeness, meaning that you meet all of the criteria of the assignment. Then I'm looking for legibility, neatness, readability, line quality, line styles, and line hierarchy. We'll talk about those things as we go through each session. So a couple of things to point out on this drawing. The lighting is acceptable. Could be a little bit brighter, but that's fine. Looking at line quality, we have very good consistency of darkness and uniformity of width. Those two things combined lead to good line quality. The better you achieve those things, the better the line quality is. Don't be overly concerned about things like smudging. I think those little dots right there happen because your pen was resting in the same spot for too long. So just don't leave your pen sitting there longer than it really needs to be, which is not long at all. Look at completeness, connecting your lines, or doing imbalanced overstrikes, such as that one. Try to make your corners come to a complete intersection like so, or you can do a bit more, there's no equal overstrike. I'll find some examples of that later. So especially with the incomplete line like this one, just make sure that you're connecting your lines. I'd rather you see a bit too much overstrike like that than not complete the lines like that one. So do pay attention to that. Really good reproduction quality here. This is probably a scan, actually. Submitting your drawings either as a JPEG or a scan is acceptable. So one or the other is fine. So looking at line quality, notice how there's a little bit of a gap in the infill there, and it would be nice if there was a cleaner line here at the between the wall and the window, just to make that a little bit neater and cleaner. Really good use of line style here, long dash, two short dots. And notice how uniform the repetitions are. That's the mark of good line style, is to have good repetition, keeping them uniform throughout while maintaining good line quality of darkness and thickness. When doing plant symbols like tree lines that overlap, at the point where they intersect, I would just omit that line. Makes it a little bit more readable, gives the drawing a little bit more clarity. If we don't need all those lines, then don't bother drawing them. But if you are going to draw them, then this line and this line should be the same thickness, and they are not. So just be aware that consistency is important. Oh, and then for like a situation like this, I think this student made that gap in the line that represents the pathway because it intersected with the property line, but it's not necessary to make that gap in between the two because the line styles are different. That gives us the understanding that they're two different types of things, where the dashed line style for the property line is something invisible, and the pavement is something physical, tangible, so it's a solid line. So no sense in making that gap there. Just make it a complete line. Finish that line. There we go, like so. These lines are getting a little bit light right in here. Just it's getting a little bit convoluted. It should look more like this over here. That's what we want this to look like. They did a good job here of combining the lines for the plant symbol. Good job there. Just be careful about keeping consistent line quality. Notice how this line has some gaps there while everything else is solid line. It should be all solid line. And this is what I'm talking about with regards to line quality and the thickness of the line. Notice how this line is a little bit thicker than this line. I think this one is better than this one over here.
I have a question about that last one, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So the top right-hand corner
Mm-hmm.
of the building,
Uh-huh.
you talked about that lightness, and when I saw that, it, to me, and this is not mine, but I was really confused about how many lines, what is it representing? So it almost appeared as though it was a doorway with maybe side lights, large side lights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't really sure.
You know what? I've looked at this drawing for so long that sometimes I just tend to have a blind spot to certain things, and you may very well be right. Because in fact, in the this is a real project.
Mhm.
That this is in fact a side light,
Right.
right?
And so
So
that one doesn't match the one on the other side of the door, which I
yeah,
understand it should at least match, but
yeah.
again, trying to figure out how many lines are really there, what kind of lines are really there. It's really hard to see in that reproduction.
Good
That was
observation.
mailed. Yeah,
So in the absence of firsthand knowledge of what's actually there, I would endeavor to draw what seems to be apparent in the drawing and to draw it as clearly as possible. So in a situation like this one, if like say if I was making this drawing and my interpretation was it was a double door with a set of side lights on either side, I would just endeavor to make all of this look, let me just get all this to be consistent. So if this
right.
was a single line there and a single line there, and just make it consistent, if that's my interpretation, then make it look the same on either side, right? You
Yep.
may be wrong because you didn't actually see the actual site, but then that could be corrected after a site visit.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this student tried the assignment both with tools and freehand, which I think is a great experiment. So a pretty good job of using the tools. Notice how sharp those lines are. These drawings reproduce better if you do not leave the original base drawing or site plan underneath your drawing, so you don't get these sort of replicated lines because they're not quite lined up. So in the future, I would recommend just taking away that base drawing from underneath. So pretty good use of tools, some good line quality here. Whereas again, the line quality here, we're focusing back on that same spot again. So maybe we're barking up the wrong tree with that. So good job there. Good darkness here in the front. I like that. Excellent job. When it comes to things like this, where we have where lines change direction, it can sometimes be very difficult to get those lines to come to an intersection that looks clean and makes sense. So if you're having, but it is possible. So just be careful about it because the student did a good job over here, but this one didn't align quite as well over here. So just try and be consistent about it. I would also find it acceptable if you were to draw this and at the change in direction, leave a very short gap. So long as you are consistent with your application of the gap, it's acceptable because it's readable and consistent. One of my professors called this professional gap. Meaning where your pen comes up and you restart someplace else just off to the side of it. So long as you're consistent with it, I'm fine with it. That's really the basis for making readable drawings is consistency. Let's go to the freehand one. And I will tell you that especially in early stages of design, having a nice readable freehand style is actually quite compelling. I find that clients find the drawings to look a little bit more open for discussion, whereas something has really nice, neat, clean lines just looks so finished that they tend to reserve any feedback because they think, oh, well, the drawing's done now, so what's the point in me saying anything? But if it looks a little bit wiggly like this, it actually kind of opens the drawing up for discussion. I actually like this student's freehand drawing better than the drafted because all those intersections that I was just talking about look much neater, right? Notice how much cleaner that looks. It just all kind of comes together. And this little bit of wiggle in the building lines, so long as the wiggle is consistent, it's fine. Just be sure to be complete by drawing the interior lines of the door openings so it's consistent. And when it comes to representing the objects that are underneath the canopy, I know that certain ways of representing a drawing, you would say, well, we would see the canopy first, so the canopy would preclude seeing the building, so I'm not going to draw it, which is what the student chose here. And that's fine. However, think about the use of the drawing and what level of drawings we're doing. The assignment was to reproduce the buildings and the plants. So I would want to see the buildings. And also at this level of design where it's a relatively small site with lots of detail, especially on the ground plane. At some point, we're going to be showing a lot of objects that are probably underneath the canopy, or if we're in a densely wooded site where it's almost all canopy, we just be looking at a lot of trees. So make a choice as to which way we're going to show it. If this was sort of a high level drawing that's showing a relationship of one property to the next, then I would say this is a good way of doing it. But if we're just showing one property, I would show the building lines. Good lighting. Notice that at this level, how this looks like really good line quality. Notice how dark and readable those lines look, even though I have this really zoomed all the way out. And if we get in close, we can see just how consistent the darkness is on those drawings. And even though there's some smudging, and that'll happen, just be cognizant of not shoving the tip of your pen into the intersection of the straight edge and the paper. And just giving that ink just a second or two to dry before you move the straight edge, and you'll minimize smudging. So this is really nice line quality, especially with regards to darkness and width, especially in the building. I think the line style here for the property line could have been a little bit bolder. Maybe make a longer dash and a wider gap in between the short dashes, just to make that read a little bit better. I think I saw a comment in one of your assignments that asked, doing that line style took a lot of time, and do people still do this by hand, or is this all done on the computer? Yes, it does take a long time, but yes, people still do this by hand. As a matter of fact, in the early stages of the design, a lot of landscape architects and designers will still do these things by hand. You get faster at it with more practice, and if you make a longer dash and bigger gaps, this will go a little bit faster, right? So people still do it by hand. You can do it in a reasonable amount of time, but yes, the computer definitely does make it easier. Good reproduction, good lighting. And this is a JPEG, so done well, holding the camera parallel to the plane that the drawing is on, and this reproduces pretty well. I'll show a few more. There's a point that I want to make on a couple of these. Pretty good. Remember the completeness. There's pavements and curbs out here, so make sure you're including those. Don't forget those things outside the property lines. This is the one. So do a little self-check with your files before you submit them. Sometimes I don't know what this might be a camera setting or something. But even if I zoom all the way in, the resolution just isn't good enough. I can't read this drawing. And to add insult to injury, the camera isn't being held parallel to the plane on the drawing. So just be a little bit more in a self-edit mode before you upload the drawings, and make sure that they're readable and usable. I need to be able to zoom in enough so I can actually read your text or look at your lines and get a fair representation of your work. So for something like this, I would ask for a resubmit, so I can give you a fair assessment. This student was concerned about smudges and how that might be minimized. Again, a lot of this is mostly by maybe laying in too much ink. When you shove that point down into that intersection of the straight edge in the paper, you get a lot of ink built up, just sucking in there through capillary action. So try and keep your pen perpendicular to the drawing surface rather than angling it into the drawing, and that'll help. Then just pause for a second after you take away the pen and before you move the straight edge, and that smudging will be minimized. I think the student also said that I think their hands were a little bit wet. So in the location where you're resting your palm, I showed you this last week, just lay a piece of scrap paper down between your palm and the drawing, and that'll keep any moisture or oils from your skin from smudging the lines. It'll keep it neater. That one's good. I think I've made all the points that I want to make. Oh yeah, sometimes just be careful. This one came up, says something went wrong. Make sure that you're saving your files as either a PDF or a JPEG. If you're saving in any other format, sometimes I'm not able to open them. So in all the assignments, I do make a point of what file type I want you to save it as. So just make sure that you're doing that. And again, make sure that they're openable and readable. This looks like really good. Question? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So that was actually mine.
Okay.
So my question is, I got a notification from the website that said, your homework was submitted and everything's fine with it. So I can't interpret that as the submission is fine.
So I guess my point is, just make sure that you can open it before you submit it. So, but I'm assuming that you can, but
I could, yeah.
Okay. All right. So something happened in between your submission and my end. So if you can just try resaving
I'll try it again.
Yeah,
Okay.
just try resaving it and resubmitting it. And
Okay.
I don't take any points off for that. I'll just ask you to resubmit if I have a problem with the file.
Yeah, no, I'll do it right after class.
Thanks. I appreciate it. This drawing looks good line quality, but notice how the lines for the pavements over here look a little bit light. And even from here, I can tell that there's some undulation between some dark sections like here and some lighter sections like there. So the importance of line quality really started back in the old-fashioned days of drafting, when this was all done on paper and we were presenting this to a room full of people from a distance. But it still matters, even though we're presenting on a screen or as an electronic document. So we'll still focus on those things. So I think we're good. A little bit dark, but still readable, so that's acceptable. Okay. I think we're not seeing anything new here. Oh, yeah, here's another one. Just a quick self-edit to make sure that, or a self-check to make sure that what you're submitting is readable on my end. I need to be able to zoom all the way in and be able to read it. So again, I'll just ask you to resubmit if that turns out to be a problem. Okay. There we go. So overall, my impressions are from your homework is that good first effort. A lot of you had good line quality, that you understood the assignment. They were readable, and things like smudges and things like that, you'll work through those. I'm not docking points for that. That'll come with practice. But make sure that they're complete, legible, readable, focusing on line quality, good line style, and we will be just fine. But if nothing else, make sure they're complete and readable. Everything else will live, right? Tell a story for another day.
So I have
Okay.
a question.
Yes.
I learned a hack from decades ago about my sister had triangles and she put pennies on the bottom before they made the triangles that you wouldn't have that
Add a little
apron
extra
under.
ridge. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about that for the rolling ruler? Or
Um,
really need to get used to not making smudges with rolling rulers?
I would just get used to not making smudges. Yeah, you can try the taping a couple of pennies on the bottom to help lift it up off of the drum, but then that
I
presents
did.
itself with its own set of challenges, right? It doesn't roll as smoothly, and now you have that tiny little gap in between the edge, and now you need to be very careful about how you position your pen. So yeah, I never subscribed to the pennies thing. Yeah, interesting hack, but
Thanks.
yeah. But at the end of the day, whatever tricks you need to use in order to make a better product, I'm all for it. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So let's talk a little bit about doing a client interview and the kinds of things that 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 we need to perform in order to gather up information. Remember, I'm gonna share our design process again here. So remember, one second, I've got too many things on this screen. There we go. Let's move that. All right. We're all seeing my landscape design process right now? Yes, okay. So we are still in the project initiation and research and analysis phase. Just as a point of context here, I'm teaching this course from the perspective of a design professional, where we would engage in a contractual relationship with the project owner. So establishing a working relationship, writing proposals and so on, we would be doing those kinds of things before we did any kind of work, before we're visiting the site and taking measurements, before we're conducting detailed interviews, before we're taking photographs of the site and taking any kind of measurements or things like that. We don't do any of those things until we're contractually engaged to do so. For those of you who are doing this for self-enrichment, or maybe doing this under the guise of, say, a design build firm or something like that, you may not be doing it in that way, where getting information from the client and going to meet with them and documenting their wish list is part of your process. That's fine. But keep in mind that when we're looking at this, we're first getting a contact from the client saying, hey, we have this project. We're seeking help from somebody. And some of these things we would do before we even leave the office. The initial contact, pre-qualifying, making sure that what the client is asking for is actually something that we're qualified to do or even interested to do. Is it a service that we provide? For instance, if they're looking for a certain type of planting design, like say for like wetland design or gravel gardens or other kinds of specialized culture, maybe we do that or maybe we don't. What are their expectations with regards to, say, deadlines, for instance? So when might they want this work done? Can we deliver on when they want this work finished or not? And getting a general understanding of, is the project big enough, small enough? Is it the right size for the kind of practice that we are? So while these are all practical matters for running a business, this might also be the kind of question that you ask yourself as a homeowner for your own individual project and doing some self-assessment. Do I have the qualifications to design this kind of a landscape? Do I need some help somewhere? Do I have the time to do it? This might also be the time to kind of rally around other members in the household to say, do I have your support in doing this? Are we all in agreement that this is something that needs to be done or should be done? And maybe that's not a contractual arrangement as like a business, but it is certainly good for the health of the household unit. So keeping those things in mind. So those kinds of pre-qualifications, do we have a good chance for a match? Those kinds of activities that happen. We're gonna touch on those lightly in the interview process. Once we have a feeling that we have a good opportunity for a match, then we'll set up an initial consultation, a site visit, so we can see the property with our own eyes to see if, in fact, we do have a good opportunity to work together and see if we can continue to move on. And then have a better understanding of what kind of services we would provide. Are we working with just helping them develop a program statement, working through analysis, working on feasibility studies? Is what you're asking for something that your zoning even allows, or will you need to get special exceptions or permissions from the township? Like, say, if you want to build, say, a larger patio, then you might be allowed based on impervious cover regulations or something along those lines. Or do you need complete planting design or construction documentations, site design, grading, drainage, stormwater management, structures and things? Do we have a good match? Do we offer all those services, or do we need to pull from the expertise of other individuals, other professionals or vendors that would have those things and bring them in as part of the design team? And once we have that understanding of the parameters of the site, then working on research and analysis, understanding the client and the site. We started off on understanding the site by gathering up base drawings of the location, whether it be in the form of a survey or aerial photography, or looking up the property on a county GIS search. Gathering up information. So we're seeking to understand them, but at some point very soon and pretty much simultaneously, we also need to understand the client. So we do that through an interview process. I often ask my clients to give me a little head start here. When I do this with my clients, we don't do an actual sit-down interview until after we've been engaged for the project. So in order to write the proposal for my work, I asked them to send me a list of the things that they would like to accomplish, and then supplement that with any notes that I might have taken from a preliminary phone call or discovery call that helps us to write our proposal. So getting some information from the client in the form of wish lists or a Pinterest board or images that they've saved that they've gleaned off of the internet that gives us some insight into the kind of project that they have in mind will get us started in the right direction on what they want to accomplish. And we often supplement that information with our own site inventory and analysis. We're going to work on that next week. And then once we have our inventory and a better understanding of the property and their preliminary wish list, then we can get together to do an interview where we can really dive down into some meaningful questions. Question here: what's an effective approach to the conversation if the client's not sure what they want? That's a great question. I usually find that a lot of clients don't really know entirely what they want. There's usually like one or two really serious problems they want to solve, or big ticket items that they would like to include, like they want a big patio or an outdoor eating area or a swimming pool. Then after that, they have no clue what they want. So it's up to us to study the site and to integrate their their primary wish or solving the big problem, and then put it together in context. And we usually get to those solutions through a better understanding of the site through site analysis, which we'll learn about next week. So in this client interview, we're going to get a better understanding of what it is exactly that the client is looking for. So let's talk a little bit about how that interview process works. Okay, does everybody see my title slide? Super. Okay. So setting up expectations before the actual interview. This is a model that I actually used when I was in design build landscaping, where preparing the design was part of the service that our firm offered, even though we did it for a small fee. But doing the interview and for expediency's sake was something that we did largely at the first meeting, and it worked pretty well in most situations. So before we set a time for an interview, we're doing those things I mentioned before, pre-qualifying the work, making sure that we have a good fit, making sure that the scope of work, what you want to do, is something that we're capable and interested in doing. And remember that some companies might do planting really well, but maybe not construction, or maybe they offer lighting, or they would rather do more retaining walls or something like that. Making sure they have a good match. And then what kind of services do we need to offer in order to get there? And potential cost and feasibility can often be difficult to determine at a first phone call. But it's important to frame up our conversation around the fact that this is going to cost something. For us to design something, it's going to cost us something to design it, and it's going to cost something to build it. And even if you are doing this for a home improvement project or for personal enrichment, this process comes at a cost to you. This will take time. This will take energy and commitment. You are committing yourself to preparing a design, and that's something that you're trying to fit in around the rest of your ongoing life. And even though for some of you who are retired or recently, maybe you're still, it's like, well, okay, this design process is taking away from my enjoyment of going to the shore, or hopping on the boat, or going to the mountains, or whatever it is. So keep in mind that everything comes at a cost, and that building things will come at a cost as well. Now, I can give a pretty clear understanding of what our services would cost, but I don't really know what it's going to cost to build things. It's hard to say because there's no magic formula that says, oh, if you have a property of this size and you want this kind of a landscape, it's going to cost this much. That formula does not exist. However, we do know it's going to cost something. And it's good to have a preliminary conversation that says, based on what you're saying, you're probably going to be up to so many dollars in cost, or between X and Y. But even then, I'm reluctant to give out that kind of information on the first phone call. The question that I usually ask is, have you given some thought as to how you're going to determine what reasonable price to pay is for the construction of this project? Not what's your budget, but have you thought about how you're going to determine value? And it's a simple yes or no question. Either they have or they haven't. If they have not come up with a method for determining value, then it's going to, part of our design process will be helping them to establish how they're going to assign a value to it. So working through a couple of different scenarios is probably going to be necessary. And when it comes to feasibility, based on what they're asking for in that first phone call, do we think that what they're asking for is even possible? I think about certain design techniques that might work well in a different climate, like an arid type garden might not work well in our mid-Atlantic hot, humid weather with heavy clay soils, where if you're asking for plants that want sharp drainage and dry weather, we can't do that here. So we might be heading down the wrong road. So setting up those expectations before we even get started is really important. But once we've pre-qualified and we planned ahead, so we're setting up a time to do that interview. Setting up some expectations to make sure that we're using our time as effectively and efficiently as possible is a good idea. So we set it on a calendar, we set up a time. We want to know who should be present, how they're going to prepare, what kinds of things we're going to discuss, and what some local codes of zoning might be about. When it comes to who should be present, I really encourage any member of the household that has a voice in what gets built there to be present. They may not be the ones that are in charge of the budget or writing the checks, but they probably have an opinion. I often find, especially in a household that has more than one person in it, if it's a couple, that usually one person is more interested in the aesthetics and function, and the other person is more interested in the practical matters of, say, budget. So having both of those individuals present at the interview is important. So we're using our time effectively. And then anybody else who might be chiming in could be welcome as well. If we're working in something like, say, a commercial entity, like a business, or some other kind of non-residential project where they might be drawing from various departments or folks who have different roles or responsibilities, but they're still using the landscape. What I usually ask the client to do is to form a committee where one person or two people are in charge of that committee, but I only communicate with the one or two people who are in charge, and have those two people, one or two people, aggregate all the responses and information from their particular committee. As for how they should prepare, just being organized, having a written list, any kind of documentation that they might have, such as a wish list or a written statement as to what they want the landscape to achieve, some sort of a performance specification might be handy, but at minimum, a list of needs and wants, problems to be solved, or items to be included, or activities that they want to support is really important. Having that written down is really helpful to help facilitate that conversation. And then when it comes to what we're going to discuss, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to talk about your needs and wants. We're going to talk about some of the challenges you might be experiencing on the property, and any problems that you might be having, the opportunities that you want to really invest in, and the like. And then when it comes to local codes and zoning, I do want to know which municipality I'm working in, so I can have at least a brief or understanding of what kind of regulatory environment we're going to be working in, whether or not they have a homeowners association, if there's bylaws that have some bearing on what they're allowed to do with their property. So I set these expectations up before we set the meeting. So that list of client homework preparing before the meeting, again, that list of likes and dislikes, what do you want, what do you not want, is really important. I think we said enough about that. I really encourage my clients to create a project file. It's so easy to share documents now in the cloud, or using social media tools like Pinterest, and being able to easily share images of the things that are representative of what they would like to see in their own landscape. We refer to those things as precedents or inspiration photos that give us some insight into what they would like to accomplish. Having a copy of HOA bylaws is really handy if an HOA, a homeowners association, is something that has bearing on your property. We can usually look up municipal codes and regulations online because they're in the public domain, but homeowners associations are usually private, so we don't have access to those things. So having any regulations, such as colors that you're allowed to use in your property, or fence heights or styles, or whether or not we're allowed to use perennials in the front yard. Some homeowners associations prohibit the use of certain plant types because they look like weeds, right? So we need to be careful about those kinds of things. And I do ask them to have some thoughts about budget, both a time budget and a monetary budget. From a time budget standpoint, what's your ability to respond to meetings? Can we work on a certain cadence? Shall we meet every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks? Are there any deadlines that we're working up against? Especially things like outdoor weddings or graduation ceremonies and those kinds of things. These are usually pretty monumental milestone type things that we need to know about those well ahead of time. And usually we try and not have our work be a prerequisite to the success of those events for obvious reasons. And then from a money standpoint, again, it's difficult to establish budget on the front end because really every landscape is a custom creation. But having some kind of an idea as to what the household budget might be to do capital improvement type projects is important. They don't have to share these with me, but they need to know that at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to be talking about what things cost and how they're going to affect the constructability of the landscape. So all these things help get the owner's mind in the right frame to be active and business-like participant in the interview process. Any questions so far? Okay. So in the interviewing process, we almost always conduct our client interviews at their residence or at their place of business, because there's usually other things that we want to see for ourselves on the property. So doing it in our office isn't usually a useful setting. So when we go there, some things to keep in mind, things like letting the client speak and asking open-ended questions is really important. This isn't our time as a designer to show off all the things that we know and how smart and creative we are. This is a chance for us to learn about the client. So allowing them to lead us to the things that are important to them is the way that we usually work this. Typically, this starts with a knock on the door. We say hello, and usually the client asks me, say, "Where do you want to go? You want to go inside? Or you want to go outside?" And I go, "Why don't you take me to the place that's most important?" So they usually lead us right to the place that's most important to them, the thing that's driving them for this project. And again, there's usually one or two things that are driving the project. So it might be a new creation like a patio or a pool or a new vegetable garden, or it might be a problem like a drainage issue or a bad view or an area that's underperforming. So going there, letting them speak, and then asking them open-ended, clarifying questions about what's happening. How do you envision yourself using this space? How many people do you think are going to be here? Which seasons do you think you might be using this space? What are your favorite materials for a creation such as this? Getting them to offer their insight is really important. And then the next point here, being able to take effective notes during the process. Now, I don't suspect that you're going to get every word in detail out, but getting the gist of it down is the important thing. Even if you have to ask them to pause for a second, is a perfectly acceptable thing to do during the interviewing process. And getting that information down. I'm going to show you some techniques that I use to gather up that information. The sharing of information is also a good part of the interviewing process and can kind of help to facilitate further discussion. And by sharing, I mean sharing your experiences. If the client mentions a challenge that they're having or a desire or a wish that they have, offering your perspective after a while of them talking can be effective. So, oh yes, we had a similar situation where they asked for something like that, and we did something like this, and that was the outcome. And they go, oh yes, that's exactly what we're looking for, something like that. Or no, 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 not that. So using your sharing and your experience to help guide that process and to get the client thinking a little more deeply about what it is that they are asking for. By setting boundaries, this is actually something that I probably should have higher up in the list of criteria. But setting up expectations as to how long this process is going to take, or which areas we're going to be talking about. From a spatial boundary, the spatial boundaries and the areas that we're talking about should correspond to the scope of the project as it was described to us when we were engaged to do the project. If the client starts talking about areas that are outside the original boundaries or scope of the work, we're gonna mention that. Say, look, we were engaged to work on this area, not that area. We can talk about that area as context, but we're not going to be creating designs unless we're going to add that to the process. For us, that means more time and an increase in cost. For your own project, it's a matter of, am I really going to be affecting change in that location, or is that simply going to be a fixed area, which is going to influence what I do on this side of the boundary? And then from a practical standpoint of setting temporal boundaries, how long is the meeting going to take? How long will it take for us to get back to you with responses or the next steps? People want to know what to expect. And I also know from experience that people have a limited attention span. After a while, we kind of get saturated mentally. And I really do find the sweet spot for interviews to be about an hour to an hour and a half. Anything after that really turns into a slog, where we need to kind of step back and maybe have a break and do something else to kind of get a mental reset. And just in our busy schedules, just making sure that we have blocked out enough time so we don't have people going, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I need to go. This is running longer than I thought, is really helpful. So as we're going through this process, if you're engaged, if this is something that's outside of your household, I find a healthy dose of grace to be in order. I'm a guest in my client's home, and I'm not there to be overbearing or imposing. I'm there to be a welcomed consultant in their project. So make it fun, make it interesting, make it lively. This is an interactive exchange, so act accordingly. Likewise, being professional. Even if this is for your own personal enrichment and for a household project, being dressed accordingly for the project. Maybe that's your style to do this in your pajamas over breakfast in the morning with the family, and that's fantastic if that's an acceptable way of doing business in your household. But if your household business gets done more at the kitchen table or the dining room table, with fully clothed, then make sure that we're kind of going along with the rules. When I do my work in my profession, I come dressed for the weather. So I have sturdy footwear because I know we're probably going outside, but I also want to make sure that I'm being respectful that if I'm going inside, I can easily take my shoes off and not track mud through the house. That I'm dressed appropriately with the kind of clothing that you would expect a creative consultant to wear when coming to their home. So know your market, know what other professionals are doing in your market, and dress accordingly. I like my clients to be comfortable. As I mentioned before, I like them to lead me first. Let them lead me to the things that are most important to them. And I basically let the clients talk about things until they run out of things to say. And then we'll go back and revisit And unless I feel like I need to have an answer to a question right away, I'm gonna let them go through what they want to lead me to, and then it will start driving down into greater detail. But I usually find that the clients are going to lead me to the things that are most important to them. As I'm doing my interviewing, much like having a business interview or having a conversation where you're looking to learn from somebody, maintaining good eye contact, not interrupting, having an open, attentive body posture, asking short, open-ended questions. It's a really great way to keep people engaged and interactive in the project. But being curious, asking those probing questions, kind of like being like a reporter and asking those who, what, where, when, why questions are better than asking those, do you like red? Yes. Do you like water? No. Whatever, right? Those don't get us anywhere, or they take longer to get us to where we need to be. So be that active listener, be that engaged participant in the process. So when I'm doing my interviewing process, I have the tools that I like. I say use the tools that you like, although I do encourage writing on paper. I find that there is a very good physical, mental connection between writing on paper and understanding what it is that we're writing. Although tablet technology has come a long way, and I understand the convenience of that as well. So use the instruments and the tools that you're most comfortable with, and I think that's going to be the most effective way to gather up information. But really, we're recording everything, or at least as much as practically possible. And the way that I do this is by developing a shorthand that'll enable me to spend more time actively listening and less time with my head down writing in my notebook. And I do this through use of symbols and marks and more of like an outline type note-taking style or graphic style rather than writing in complete sentences. Because remember that the notes that you're gathering up are for you to use to go back into the studio and organize this information, not for just to hand over the notes directly to the client for their use. I don't take photos while we're interviewing in the property. I'll save that for afterwards or before other times. It's too disruptive. So I'll also ask permission before I take any photographs of the property, just so they're comfortable with me doing so. Point of interest, I always include a disclaimer about photography in our professional contracts that the photographs that we take of the property during the process or any completed work are our property and that they sign off on that. But we also agree that we're not going to share the location or any identifying information, but we might use it for publications, or we might use it for award submissions or other things where the photographs might wind up in the public realm, but we'll protect their privacy. So a couple more notes, then we'll take a short break. So when I'm taking notes, this is similar to what some of my note taking will look like, and it might vary based on the kind of information that I'm collecting. I usually collect in more bullet points, single line type notes where each line represents an individual idea. Often we'll use a mind map type system in order to organize ideas around a central idea, particularly when our gardens might be theme-based, such as swimming gardens or outdoor recreation gardens or multi-use food gardens or those kinds of things. So if we're organizing around a theme, like this particular interview was for one of my student exhibition gardens here at Longwood, where the central theme was storytelling, and we were asked to tell a story around three criteria of land, legacy, and community. So then we were brainstorming as to what each of those criteria might mean, so we could organize that information easily around that mind map. And we might also use some symbols to help us easily identify the things that are maybe the most important in the landscape. We might use an exclamation point, things where there was a point of emphasis from the client. If they really leaned into something and they said the same thing more than once, I'll put an exclamation point next to it. If it's more of a to-do item, like please include this, I'll put that as a check mark item. If it's a particular item or object where we can say it's this item and that size and that shape, check. Or if I had questions that we had to do some more research into a certain thing, I might put question marks before or after it to explore a possibility of an inclusion rather than say a firm request. Couple more items about interviewing. If you have the opportunity to go inside the house, looking from inside, getting the views that the client has can be really helpful to understand what they're seeing, what their perspectives are. It also gives us a chance to observe their style, the kinds of decorating style or the architectural details, what their furnishings look like, can really be helpful to understand how they might like to organize the exterior. And then finally from the outside, going to those areas of concern, observing site conditions and being a little bit like a detective. If you see something that looks like it might be a problem, like I've become really good at seeing indications or signs of where there's areas of poor drainage, or getting an understanding of what it looks like when we're looking out to neighboring properties. Which areas or which view lines or view sheds does the client like? And what things do we see using our objectivity on the site? Since we're new, we don't have the recency bias that sort of makes us blind to our own observations of the property. Okay. So I'm going to pause it here because right now my dogs are really ready for dinner and I'll feed them and I'll give us all a chance to take a little bit of break. So I have 3 after the hour. So let's take our break to 1/4 after the hour, and then we'll talk about preparing a program statement. Talk to you soon. Okay, welcome back. So let's finish our our discussion here to include how we're going to organize the information that we collected in the interview into a document that will be our guiding document for being successful in the design, which is the program statement. It's kind of like a business plan for the landscape. It identifies what success looks like, provides those measurable things or quantifiable things that we can express at the beginning of the project, that as we go through the design process, we check through the program statement to assure that we are meeting all of the objectives that help us to reach our goal. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So our program statement is where we put the results of our interview. It's going to define our areas of focus, exactly where we're going to be working, setting those boundaries. So the program statement might say that the work is going to be exclusively in the front yard, between the front wall of the house and the street, and from property line to property line. Or it'll be the entire property, or we're looking at the project in a series of areas such as front yard, side yard, backyard, those kinds of boundaries. That way we know how we're identifying certain areas in the property. We're speaking the same language as the client. It also lets us know when we have fulfilled the design for a particular space. This is the area, this is how it's defined, this is where we're going to be working. It'll include any requested inclusions, items, or activities, meaning that if the client said that I really want to have a place where I can do herb gardening, or I really want to have a place where the kids can play play catch, or play croquet, or something like that, or specific items. We want a place for composting bins, or we want a koi pond, to include those requested inclusions in the program statement. It should also include information as to how large they should be, or what kind of output they're supposed to have. So for instance, we may not know how big an herb garden needs to be in dimensions wise, but the client might say, I want enough room to grow a dozen different varieties of herbs to use for cooking for our household. Or as contrasted to, we want to be able to grow some vegetables that will support our household, plus have enough left over so that kids can have a produce stand to sell things during the summer. So help us to give an idea as to how we can calculate sizes of things. If they're asking for a thing like a patio or a seating area, how many people should it accommodate? How often is it going to be used? Is it seasonal? Is it going to be a daily use kind of a space? If it's something like, say, a fish pond, well, how many fish do you plan on having? Is it going to be something for 3 fish or 300 fish? So having some very specific parameters as to how the space will be designed, so we have something measurable. It isn't enough just to say we want a patio. Say, okay, well, who's it for, and how big is it going to be? Who are the garden visitors? Who's coming? How many are there? How often do they come? What kind of activities are they expected to do? What's the occasion for them being here? This is for the family to use on a daily basis, or we like to use this space on the weekends, or we have a big family reunion once a year in the summertime, and we need to put a tent out in the backyard, and the tent is this big. So knowing what the size, the visitors, the frequency of those garden guests is important. And again, stating budget, time, resources. If the budget was expressed on the front end, we'll include that. They say, look, we can't go over X numbers of dollars. Then we will say that the client has this budget. It hasn't been verified as to whether or not this is a feasible budget or not, but we'll explore that in the design process. Time can be how much time it would take to design or build. Time might also be what's the lifespan of the garden itself? Meaning, usually gardens don't survive past the tenure of the original owners. That's in the majority of the time, that seems to be the case. So how long is the event horizon here on the property? So you might ask questions like, is this your forever home, or will you be going to downsize when the kids leave, after the kids graduate college, or are you going to be envisioning this as a thing to attract grandkids when the family starts to grow? Well, what's the lifespan of this garden? Are we designing for 5 years, 10 years, indefinite? That's important when we think about how we're designing the space. And then what kind of resources are being brought to the project? Maybe things that are meant to be preserved or repurposed, or other things like maybe sweat equity on the part of the client. What other kinds of things other than time or money might be brought to the project that would be important for us to know? And any other kind of a thing that sets up the expectations or describes the existing conditions and why they need to change. What the program statement should not do is be a place for you to offer up your design solutions or ideas. This is not the place for that. Save that for a concept plan. So you can save that for a verbal pitch when you're walking the property with them and doing the interview. But the program statement is meant to be a way of defining the objectives in order to get us to a goal, not to include your ideas for what should be there, or what you would like to see there. You as a designer, if the client says specifically, we want a garden that will be all orange blooming perennials in the summertime, then state that. Don't say we're going to use this, that, and the other orange perennials in order to satisfy it. You don't need to put that there. Just write down what the client is asking for and what success would look like to them. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of what a program statement might look like. A couple of different formats here. We can create program statements in a variety of ways. Might take the form of something like a slide deck. We did this for a client one time. This was a competitive process, so we wanted it to look a little bit fancier, a little bit more visually, graphically appealing. So we created a slide deck to help them organize their program, their wish list. So we included some documentation of the site. We included the base drawings that they offered to us, plus some aerial photography that we pulled off of the internet. And then we listed out the things that the client was asking for, providing outdoor spaces that are supportive of their lifestyle and their family and their size, designed elements being simple and purposeful, materials that are natural. They appreciate gardening in the outdoors, but they rely on contractors for maintenance. They specifically asked for rain barrels and herbs. So I like doing things myself. I like using bullets or outline. I find it to be very readable and easier to organize information this way. So maybe start with a section that does some overarching ideas for the entire property, and then maybe drill down into specific use areas in the property. So breaking it down by the area on the property, the front yard, and then we can organize ideas underneath that that are particular to that location on the property. Plant placement for views, visual balance of the architecture, creating a welcoming entrance for the front yard. Other ways of expressing the ideas might be through an outline. So maybe putting up an overall heading that they wish to renovate the gardens in various areas by bringing the gardens back to a more vivid and thriving state. Their preferences for planting beds and what might change to them, how they plan on engaging in the process, which areas are going to be working on, other areas that weren't prioritized, and then other areas of things that might have inspired them and how they came up with their ideas for the property. Doing things in an outline format can be another useful way of organizing information. We're doing more of a numbered list with headings for each of the individual areas. Here we expressed where the property is located, what they want to do, creating a master plan. Then we have headings for general preferences, front yard, side yard, left side, driveway, entrance, and then break it down by those areas. So the format for the program statement can be as simple and clean as you like it to be. It can be simple bulleted items and wish lists, or it might be you might write things out more in prose and complete sentences using more descriptive language. It's entirely up to you. The importance is that we capture the information that we talked about earlier, and only that information, not offering new ideas. And that we do it in a way that's visually appealing and organized so we can find the information when we need to get to it. So remember, I use the program statement much like a checklist, so it can be sure that as I'm designing, I can cross off the thing that I've accomplished and know that we're meeting the objectives of the client. Whether or not it's appealing and creative enough for them, that remains to be seen, and that's why we present the information in various stages. Okay, let's end that. Done with my slideshow. Okay, So, and again, all of these presentations are in D2L under the content section, so you can go back and revisit those or rewatch the recording. Any questions about program statement?
So just a question of how do you present this back to the client, and what is it? Are you just looking for them to agree that these are the objectives and things before you kind of move to the next step?
Correct. Yep. So after we compile this program statement, we'll send them a copy of it to make sure that we haven't missed anything and that they agree with everything that's in there. We often include at least the initial ideas that they were asking for from our discovery call in our contracts with the client, so we have a general understanding of what we're being engaged for. But then this information will then be documented. We'll send them this. And then when we do our first presentation, we'll have this document with us. We often include it right there on the drawing. So as we're looking at things on the plan, we have this list of information right there on the drawing.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You made a comment that gardens lifespan typically is about 10 years, or
No, that's not what I said. What I said was
survive
the gardens usually don't survive beyond the tenure of the owners that created it.
tenure. Okay, all right. Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what's the
Well, we're creating something that's unique and specific to the
Bespoke.
owners, right? So whether this is a business that's trying to create like an outdoor dining patio for a restaurant, or it's the owners that want a special kind of garden that supports their lifestyle, it's specific to them. So if they sell their house and someone new comes along, there's no guarantee that the new owners are going to want the thing that we designed for the previous owners. And I've been in business long enough to realize that that's true. They're like, yeah, it's a nice garden. It's lovely. It looks great, but it's not what we want, right? So just like you would want to change the kitchen or the family room or all the bathrooms in the house that you just bought, the same thing happens with the landscape.
wow?
So if I know that the client's going to say, yeah, the kids are going to graduate from college in 10 years and we're going to sell this place, then there's no point in me putting a tree in the ground saying, well, in 30 years, this tree is going to look great. Like, so they'd be very altruistic of you for the next owners, but what good is it for you now?
That's interesting. Okay.
Is this program statement a part of your like initial consult after you've had a letter of agreement for a program statement, and then after program statement you enter into a contractual agreement for design?
It's a good question. It depends on the size of the project. If this is a relatively small project, like the one that we're engaging in now, there's a good chance that I could discover all this information at my initial discovery site visit. So once I meet them for the first time on their property, we can go through and document all these things in a reasonable amount of time, like less than an hour, and include that in our proposal to our client. And then that becomes part of our contractual agreement. For larger projects, bigger residential projects where there's a lot of moving parts, or it's impractical for us to really ask even good questions, we don't know enough about them or the property yet to really ask good questions, then we make that discovery part of our services. So while in our agreement that they'll sign and becomes our contract, we'll say, we understand that you want these things in general, but we have other learning to do, which will become part of our process once you engage us. Make sense? Great. Any other questions? Great. You'll have more, and we'll work through them as they come. And as this becomes a practical exercise, you'll learn even more things. All right. So let's learn a little bit. Let's learn a lot about the site. Okay. All right. So we are looking at the D2L homepage as you would see it. So we are going to go to a couple ways we can get there. We can either go to content and we'll go to a list of the content items, or we can go down to these tiles and go down to the design project. My personal preference is to go to the content tab and then go to the design project. We can hit the down arrow and that'll open everything up. So that's where we're going to find everything that is related to the site. So for the question that was asked earlier about where is that site plan, there it is. So we can click on that, we can take a look at it, and there's our site plan. If you need to create a fresh copy, if you spilled coffee on yours or something, you can download a fresh PDF and take it to the copy center and have a new one printed up, where you can use it for your reference here on online. So let's take a little look at the at some base drawings that that we have to show us what the property looks like. So this is the county GIS listing for the property. It shows us the boundary, generally speaking, with the red line. That's generally speaking. In most situations, this site plan will come with some information about the address, the lot size, its assessment value, when it was assessed, which municipality and which school district it's located in, all leading to taxation of the property and the laws that are promulgated on this particular parcel, which of course we redacted, so I'm protecting the privacy of my client here. So this site drawing gives us some information about its location. We can see the proximity to the neighbors, and that we're basically, surrounded by our neighbors, very close on the left and the right. And even behind us, there's one house right here, and there's another house over here. So really close to our neighbors. We're getting some understanding as to what the street grid looks like. We can see that there is in fact, that sidewalk running across the front on this side of the property. No sidewalk on the other property. So if there is pedestrian traffic, it's probably all going to be on our side of the street. We can see some outlines of trees here of various kinds. You notice a very large one here, which is actually not on our property. So if we look on the survey, you'll notice that there's no tree listed. There's a big one on the corner. That's because it's on the neighbor's property. So looking at this, we can make some inferences as to what's happening here. We look on the drawing, we can see that north is pointing up. So that means that the sun is to our south, sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So in the morning, it looks like these trees are going to be casting shade in the backyard. And in the afternoon, the house will be casting shade in the backyard in the afternoon. So we'll keep those things in mind as we're looking. So we'll talk about site analysis later. This drawing also shows those contour lines that I was talking about. And we look closely, we can see that these bold-headed lines are labeled as 370. This one in the middle is labeled as 360. So between here and here, the ground drops 10 feet. But then from here to here, it drops another 10 feet, but all the way up to the other side of the property. So you can see where those lines are far apart, it's actually quite flat through here. And then where the lines are close together, it's actually quite steep, at least in this back corner of the property. And then it gets kind of flat over here on the other side of the property, but this corner is rather steep. Just to zoom out for a moment, we get a better understanding of what the neighborhood looks like. So it is in a town situation on a street grid. We can see that the building is dense, but it's not that dense. It isn't like townhome dense, right? So each parcel has a reasonable amount of green space supporting it, but the neighbors are never too far away. So you never get the feeling that you're not in town. So we keep that in mind as we're looking at the property. So looking at this kind of documentation helps us to get an understanding of what the site looks like, what some of the existing conditions are. We can see that we have a range of vegetation around us, even though a lot of it is not actually on our property. How much vehicular traffic goes through. Notice that there's not a whole lot of cars parked on the street, so not very dense. So we're going to refer to this if we're just looking at the photographs, that it's a rather quiet residential neighborhood. So let's take a look at some photographs of the site. So here we are on the street looking towards the house. We're going to go through an interview process here in just a few minutes, but you can see that there's some construction happening. This is the clients are under construction, renovating the property to update it to their personal needs. It's an older home built in the 1930s or thereabouts. From the site plan as you saw, there's those two trees that were shown in the plan, those two flowering cherries. There's the sidewalk in the front. There's another look at the sidewalk. We're just going to click through all the pictures quickly, and then we're going to go into our interviewing process. Some of the existing conditions, some deteriorating pavements, existing walkways and plants, existing vegetation on the corners, trash cans. There's the driveway that you saw in the site plan, and there's the property corner. So notice the distance between the edge of the pavement and the property line. You saw it on the drawing. There it is in reality. It's skinny, right? Not a lot of space happening there. There's a marking on the property corner. So on the left is our property, on the right is the neighbor's property. Closer look at those flowering cherry trees, some of the vegetation underneath of it, rhododendrons and azaleas, lots of pachysandra. Here's the left side yard. There's the property line right on pretty much right on the edge of that walkway. Neighbor's property on the left, our property on the right. There's a closer look at that walkway as it exists. There's a air conditioning unit, which is brand new, so that's staying. There's a view of that same area in the off season where everything is devoid of foliage. Here we are in the backyard under renovation, making massive changes. There's those side light windows that you pointed out. Looking at some of the ground conditions, no vegetation, all stripped bare from the construction process. Notice the standing water here. We're going to take a look at that. This gives you a sensation of the house to the southeast, just up the hill. So we noticed that there's a 10-foot grade differential between our property and the one behind us. So basically that neighbor's house kind of looks right down on top of us. We do have the benefit of having a number of trees in between us and that house. But in the winter time, when some of those deciduous trees have lost their leaves, it's pretty obvious. Looking back to the house and the side yard. Another look at the same area. This is just outside the kitchen, and there's a little split unit, HVAC unit there. Like some existing pavements that are some stepping stones that go around there. Existing vegetation. This is the little detached garage, little shed thing. It's cute. Just to the left of that same detached garage is that existing patio. Those rectangular pavers that you saw that you were drawing, and what that looks like. There's that fence, which belongs to the neighbor, but it's also on our property. So there's that to contend with. Gonna look back to the house. There's this is the hawthorn tree in front of us, and to the right is the crabapple. A view from the den out the doors and into the landscape. And that's it. I'm done. Of course, you can always go back to it. Okay. So there's a brief introduction to the site. So now, imagine, if you will, that this is a small project. So as part of your investigation into the design, we're going to conduct our site visit and interview the client. So I am going to be the voice of the client here, and it's going to be your job to gather up the information that that I'm offering to you, and then ask clarifying questions, some open-ended questions as to what we might want to make sure that you understand what it is that we are asking for. Actually, we can do this right now since we're on here. We'll go to the assignment. Your assignment here is the creation of a program statement. So you're going to create that program statement that describes the client, the site, and the requested scope of work. So you're going to do this about a one-pager here, so about 500 words or less. It's a little bit more, that's fine. I just don't want you writing 2, 3, 4 pages. It doesn't need to be that. It needs to be like a page, and that's going to be pretty good for this size project. In the format of your choice, meaning it can be a bulleted list, it can be a numbered list, it can be written in paragraphs and complete sentences and telling more of a story as to what the project requires. You can organize it and decorate it, package it any way that you like, but it needs to include the pertinent information that that the client has asked for. So I'm not going to tell you precisely like, hey, here's exactly the thing that I'm really asking you for. You need to discover that, right? So you need to be paying attention in the interview process to discover what the most important things are to the client and document them in the program statement. So that is your homework assignment. So your job is to discover what those most important items are, and then document that into the program statement. So we're going to begin our interview. There we go. All right. So, ready? Take notes. All right. So this is, I mean, I'm not going to use their voice. I'm just sort of standing in as proxy for that. So this is the property and the project, the home of Mark and Meredith Murphy and their son, Chris, who is 8 years old. So a little background information about the family. Mark is an accountant and he enjoys outdoor cooking. He especially likes smoking meats. And Meredith is a fabric artist, and she creates her own line of clothing using plants for dyes. And finally, Chris, 8-year-old Chris, he's in the Cub Scouts. He enjoys the outdoors, and he enjoys playing basketball. So, where are we located? We are located in the lovely little town of Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, not too far from Longwood Gardens. Small town, about 6,000 people. It's small, it's walkable, has lovely little shops. It has parks, it has things to do. It's known for a really wonderful Memorial Day parade and the Mushroom Festival that happens in September. We just had it last week. It's fantastic. So it's lively, it's interesting, it's a great place to be for families. And it also has a really great tradition of gardens in the area. Longwood is nearby, places like Winterthur and Mount Cuba and Chanticleer and Tyler Arboretum, Morris Arboretum, all kinds of wonderful things are within an easy drive from here. So people appreciate gardens in Kennett Square. It's kind of what people do. And while it doesn't rule people's lives, it's still it's definitely appreciated. So this is it's a young family. They're still kind of starting out. This is kind of like their first kind of forever home. They're renovating this house and they're getting contracted help to restore it. The house was built in the 1930s. It's quaint. It's simple. Kind of a nondescript style of architecture. And maybe it's little mishmash of some traditional federal or colonial styles with maybe a little bit of cottage or arts and crafts thrown in there with the hip roof and some of the other little decorative flourishes. But a simple but solid, well-built, nice house that's been around for almost 100 years. So it's been around the block. It stood the test of time. It's an enduring building, and it's worthy of renovation. So that's what they're seeking to do, is to kind of make this house their own. So they want to renovate the landscape to go along with the renovation of the house. So walking around, see it's looking a little bit ragged in the landscape. Mixtures of evergreen and herbaceous materials. This space in between the street and the sidewalk just looks terrible, and it's the owner's responsibility to take care of it. Even though it's in the public domain, it's their responsibility to care for it and care for the sidewalk. Speaking of the sidewalk, it's in pretty poor shape. It's heaved up in one area. It's starting to crack in certain places. Where's that picture of the heaving? Hold on one second. Going around. No, not there, not there. That's not it. Okay, oh, it was in the first one. You look closely here, the sidewalk is kind of raising up there. There's probably a street tree here at some point in the past, and the roots pushed up the sidewalk, and then the tree was taken down, but the sidewalk stayed where it was. So maybe that's in need of some renovation. These existing trees, they're nice, but we're not married to them. Some of the plants are looking a little bit overgrown and ragged. Definitely in need of some renovation. been pruned pretty heavily over their lifespan. So maybe they could be pruned and look better, or maybe we just take them out. Right next to our neighbors. We get along pretty well with the neighbors since we're right next door to them. We don't mind seeing them on a regular basis, but we do want at least some areas of privacy, like 1 or 2 spaces where we don't feel like we're on display. Another thing about the property is, like with the house is kind of nondescript. It isn't any one particular style, and our materials are simple. So therefore, it doesn't seem to have like any kind of a particular message. So we really would like our landscape designer to create an interesting, engaging theme that will help to unify the house and the landscape. Having an engaging theme that's creative, something that you come up with that can hold the whole thing together is really important to us. We do come in and out of the property on both sides. We like to walk around it, but we don't have to do it that way, just so long as we can get back into the property, into the backyard easily. Speaking of which, about getting in the backyard, we don't want to cut grass. Grass just seems like a waste of time here. Owning a lawnmower seems like a waste. So we don't want any turf grass at all on the property, which is probably fine, as we're having a hard time growing grass in the backyard anyway. We're not quite sure why, but the grass isn't really doing well. So we want that to go away. We also noticed that when we're in the backyard, after it rains, water stands here in the backyard for a day or two. Eventually it goes away, but it does kind of turn into a mucky mess. So it makes our mulch float away, or the grass just always gets soggy. We don't like that very much. So we would like to see a solution to our water problem. There's our neighbors. Again, we know we're on display. We're surrounded by houses, and we don't need absolute privacy from everybody, but we would like some little corner, 1 or 2 spots maybe, where we can kind of get away and feel protected from the neighbors. This is our fence here in front of us, but the fence over here on the side belongs to our neighbor, or at least we think it does. It seems like it's right on top of the property line. So this neighbor here to our right, we just kind of agree that the fence is kind of both of ours, and we'll just leave it alone. It's kind of in there in no man's land. That's the understanding that we've had so far. Maybe that'll change. I don't know. That's our bedroom up top there. We're going to have this little Juliet balcony coming out. We'll be able to stand out there and look out into the backyard. This is our den right here. We like to sit there. That's where the family spends most of its time together. If we're not in the kitchen, we're probably in there. We're watching TV or reading a book or entertaining friends in there. This is our kitchen. The sink is right here. Counter space over here on this side. And then we have this little detached garage, sort of like a little garden shed outbuilding thing. We really don't have any specific need for it. It kind of just turns into like this catch-all space. We put all kinds of things in there. We've got tools and we've got trash cans and we've got other things, but it mostly just turns into kind of a catch-all. It's kind of like a junky spot, but it's a really cute little building, and we wouldn't mind having maybe something a little bit more interesting use for it. Because it is kind of nice, and we're fixing it up, but you know, we're not quite sure what we're going to do with it. So we would be interested in some ideas for that. We have this little patio space outside the garden shed outbuilding garage thing, and it's nice. It works, but you know, it's a little bit small. It's good for two people. The stones are nice. We like the stones. We like the plants. We've got the fence over here. The neighbor put it up. Part of it's on our property. So we're not sure if we're going to fight them on it or if we're just going to let them pass on it. So I guess it just kind of depends on what you come up with the design, whether or not we should ask them to move it or not. Another look back to the property. There's our bedroom up there. There's the den, kitchen right in front of us here to the left. So this is our den from the inside and looking out there. We've got the tree. There's our neighbor's fence that makes a corner there. There's a utility pole right there. We originally had the utilities coming in overhead, but we're now burying them. You can see the trench right there. And we're sending those utilities to the house underground. All right, so you've seen my whole property. Yeah, I think in addition to the things that I've already said, we're putting a lot of attention into the house and making it kind of feel ours. We really want the gardens to have that same kind of handcrafted, custom kind of a feel. And we want you to be creative. And I guess that's it. Do you have any questions?
I'm curious to know if the homeowners are going to paint the house as well as the garage.
We are going to paint it. But the color that we paint it will probably have a lot to do with the kind of choices that we make with the landscapes. We want that exterior and the landscape to work together. I see a raised hand. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, I was just wondering, how involved are you going to be in the upkeep?
Yeah, that's a good question. We can probably do garden care work on our own, but if it's going to be more challenging, like heavy lifting kind of stuff, we'll probably hire somebody to help us with it. Gardening isn't really a hobby of ours, but we can commit a few hours a week to maintenance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Monica, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to know about, it looks like in the back of the house, I see some siding, the front, it looks like a stucco material. What's that gonna look like? Is the whole house gonna be the siding and new windows and all of that? Or are you gonna keep the front, the flavor that it is now?
Yeah, so all the back is going to be siding like you're seeing on the left. This is the old siding that's coming off. The new siding is going on over here on the left. And then in the front, we have more of that stucco type material, which we're going to keep that. We're going to keep that as stucco on the front. We're going to paint it somehow, but we're just, like I said, we haven't haven't decided on color.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And then I would ask about the aspect of front and backyards. Is it supposed to be more functional or visual? I know that the lady is the artist. So is it something she'd like to incorporate some, maybe the functionality in the front yard and not necessarily in the backyard, or none?
Yeah. Well, it's a really good question, because the front yard, let's walk around to the front yard here. There we go. You get a pretty good feeling. It's kind of long and skinny, right? So we're not quite sure what to do with it. Right now it's full of plants. If it weren't for those two big cherry trees, it would get a lot of sun in the afternoon. We like the trees. It gives us some privacy and shade from our second floor bedroom windows, but we also know that they're kind of dominating that area and they're in the front. So we're a little bit stuck. So we're looking for some creative ideas as to how we might use the front yard. We don't necessarily subscribe to the front of the house is for guests and the back of the house is for the owner's notion. You know, we figure we bought the whole property, so we should be able to use the whole thing the way we want. Seymour, you have a question?
Yeah, what's the budget for this project?
Yeah, so we're spending money like crazy on the house, and we haven't run out yet. So I guess what we're really interested in is, and you know, we know that we're probably going to hit up against a budgetary problem with the house at some point, and that's fine. What we're really interested in is having a plan for the landscape that we can chip away at over time. So even if we can't afford the whole thing all at once, we'll find a way to make it happen if we love the idea.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that money is no object, because at some point it always is, but I don't want financial resources to restrict your creativity.
So can I ask a follow-up question with that?
Yes.
Would you be open to staging through a number of seasons when it comes to landscaping plan? Or are you saying if you love the idea, you'll figure out a way how to pay for it, and you just want instant gratification and you want it done as soon as possible?
So we don't mind phasing it out over a period of time. So we can do it in increments. That's fine.
Okay.
And
Eva, go ahead.
So there's a 8-year-old boy who likes to play basketball. Is it something that we'd like to accommodate him and have a little corner with a basketball hoop?
I'm sure Chris would love that.
What about the parents?
Well, you know, when if Mark isn't smoking meat or Meredith isn't dyeing fabric, I don't know how much they're playing basketball, but I know Chris might like it. But Mark and Meredith also know that basketball, even a little half court thing, or even just might take up space. So Chris would like it. Maybe that'd be fine. But we also know that there's a park just a 10-minute walk away, and he can play basketball there.
All right. And would they be open to any water features, since they have water being collected in their backyards?
Well, let's see what you have in mind. We didn't think about a water feature, but if you think that we should have one and it would fit this theme that you come up with for our garden, then we'd like to see it.
Is there any preference for plants? Like, do you want a lot of natives, or do you not care? Do you want to attract pollinators or anything?
We don't know much about that. I do know that Meredith enjoys using certain kinds of plants for dyeing fabric. So she knows a lot about those things, but whether or not they're native or if they attract other things, that's not really on our radar.
Could we get a
Okay.
list of those plants?
Say that again?
Could we get a list of the plants she uses for dyes?
Well,
We'll see.
I think the real question is she looking to leverage the property to do that? Or does she have, right?
Meredith purchases a lot of these plants, in bulk from larger growers who have big farms. I don't think there's enough room in this
Yeah.
property to actually support her business.
Okay.
Anything that would happen here might be experimental or just a nod to what she does for a living.
Given that the house is built in the 30s, are there
Mhm.
any restrictions as far as historical, with
Ah.
paint colors or anything we can or can't plant? Is there any restrictions that way?
That's a great question. We are just outside the historic district, so there's no regulations on colors or architectural styles.
Can I ask about the concrete wall in the back left corner of the property?
Yeah, that's a great
was
question.
saying.
You're going to ask about that? Yeah. So I don't have a good photograph of that, and I wish that I did. Let me see if I can get us close to it. Hold on one second. So that's an interesting structure, that little wall. It's kind of like right down at ground level. It looks like it was somebody's attempt at redirecting water from the neighbor's property to prevent it from coming onto ours. Here you go. You can just make it out. It's right there. You see it?
Yeah.
That's it. So there it is. It's just this little thing. And it seems that when it rains a lot, water comes down the neighbor's property and it collects behind this wall, and it kind of sits there for a little while. So really that whole area just is kind of like a weedy, muddy, mucky mess. And we're not even really sure that it's doing what it was intended to do or even why it's doing it. So we don't know if we want to keep it or not.
And I know that the planning for the design would take a while, but how long is the construction going to be going on?
Construction will be going on for probably another year, but we would like to see your design done in 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
About the outside utilities like the AC units and stuff. Do you mind seeing those, or should something be done to maybe help hide them? There's the one on the side of the house, which I'm assuming is probably seen less. And then there's the one in the back, which is probably seen more often. So if you have a preference with that, if you wanted them covered.
The one on the other side of the property doesn't bother us too much. This one, it's kind of like right there where it's there all the time. So if we can find a way to make it not so visually dominant, we would love that, but it's not a high priority.
Sorry, Daniela, can you clarify the 6-week answer? So
it corresponds exactly to when your final plan is due for this course.
Well, okay, but so you want the design done, and how long would you like us to wait before we start installations and things like that?
Great. Yeah, so we haven't decided that. We need to figure out how intensive the construction is going to be and how much it's going to cost. So we're not too concerned about when we start doing it. So we're more concerned about what we're going to do.
How much time do you want to be spending outside in your garden? And how do you want to feel when you're out there?
To add to that, what activities?
Yeah.
And if all seasons too, or just certain seasons.
Yeah. So we know we have a small house and a small property. So like every square foot matters to us, right? So if we can do some things outside for as much of the year as possible, knowing that we live here in the mid-Atlantic, our winters are cold and wet, occasionally snowy and icy. But we wouldn't mind trying to extend our seasons as much as possible, being outdoors, on a pretty regular basis with the 3 of us in the family. So being outside, if we can have some friends over, or maybe just have just the 3 of us having a little meal together. I do like using my smoker and doing that. So it would be great to have a location to do that. And to have, we don't really do any kind of like major entertaining, so we don't need anything elaborate. But from time to time, we'll have a few people over, some extended family. We might entertain, from time to time, like 5 to 8 people in addition to us.
Does Meredith and Mark, do they cook a lot? Do you guys want a vegetable garden, herb gardens?
We're not much of gardeners, so we're not going to take care of things like that so much. So if we do it, it could be small and experimental, or something that would be maybe just something nice to look at. Then we might also be able to harvest some herbs or things like that. I've read some things about using some of those things to help with my meat smoking, so maybe that might be helpful.
So in terms of, sorry, go ahead.
Do you park your cars on the driveway or on the street?
We put them in the driveway now, but you notice that there's hardly ever any cars parked in the street, so we park there sometimes too. It depends on what we're doing. We're fine with either.
Are there?
Hold on, Eric, hold on a second. Eric, hold on. Carrie, you're next.
So in terms of materials, do you have a preference? Do you want some gravel? What kind of hardscape do you think you might enjoy out back and along the side there? I see. Do you want mulch? What would you like in terms of the combination of materials?
Yeah, I mean, right now we've grown accustomed to natural stone, and we've got those irregular stepping stones here. And in the side patio, we have these Pennsylvania bluestones. We got a concrete walkway in the front. But all that being said, we're open to other materials. I think the most important thing to us is that the gardens need to feel special and handcrafted. So we don't know a lot about what kind of materials work well outside. So we're going to listen to your recommendations. Eric, go ahead.
Are there any pests or diseases for trees or plants that have been going through the neighborhood?
Not to our knowledge. And I'll pause that for a second and say we're not going to get down into species in this exercise. So we wouldn't be calling out specific plants, so we wouldn't have enough information on that anyhow. So the practical matters of plant selection will be a moot point for this exercise. But good question though.
Thanks.
So just to restate the scope of work, you're looking for a whole house plan for the whole yard, front, back, side, the whole thing. You want to bring it all together. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do the family have any pets?
No pets. No pets and no plans to get any.
Does anybody work at home?
Mark has a home office from time to time for his accounting practice, but that's just sort of an aside, just as a convenience. Likewise for Meredith, she has her own studio elsewhere, so she doesn't need room to work here.
Thanks.
Is there anything specific that you'd really like included, like a fire pit, conversation area, around a fire pit or something like that would help extend the seasons?
We hadn't thought about those things specifically, but again, we want to use our property as much as possible. So if that would help us to better engage with the outdoors, we will listen to your recommendations.
With the garage, are you guys interested at all in using the garage as a garage for cars, or?
Our cars won't fit in here. It's too small.
Okay.
So So we know we can't park our cars in it, but we certainly want to use it for something else. Not
Are
sure
there
what, though.
any restrictions from the town regarding having an open fire flame in the backyard?
No, you can have a fire pit.
Okay.
Is the garage unfinished on the inside? So it's a,
Yeah, there's nothing special. It's not, there's no heat. There's no running water in it. It has electricity. So it wouldn't be something that you could use as a living space.
Just,
But it does
You
have
look
finished
at-
walls and kind of like, it looks like a garage inside.
Are
Just-
you looking at
Go
this
ahead.
project to manage the water in the backyard? Or are you gonna have someone else address that, the rainwater that you have the runoff from the
Yeah, we know it's
neighbor's side?
wet back there. So we'll be looking to you to help us solve that problem.
does Chris have a lot of friends over, or does he go to other friends' house for sleepovers and activities?
Yeah, he has some friends over from time to time. But you're right, he's here in town, so he's got lots of options. He can go to friends' houses, he can go to the park, run around the neighborhood. So be super accommodating to having lots of kids rattling around here.
I'm not clear on the sidewalk between, the area between the sidewalk and the street. So I understand that the owners manage it, but can they add something to it? Bushes, grasses, trees, or if there are laws against it?
Yeah, so the town says that we need to maintain a a vegetated cover on that space. Which the way everybody seems to interpret it is like it can be grass, turf grass, or mowed grass, or you can put plants there. It's up to you. If you put trees there, then those trees become street trees, and they're now become the property of the town, even though you're still required to maintain them. So we can put little plants in there or grass, and we can do pretty much whatever we want. You can notice our neighbors next door, they have this big ornamental grass in there.
Yeah.
Was the utility pole in the back removed when the lines were buried?
No, the pole's still there, but now
Okay.
the line goes underground instead of over.
So the pole can be removed?
No, the pole has to stay. That's where the power's coming from.
okay. With the verge out front, on the street there and against the sidewalk, they'd
Mhm.
still need to be able to get out in and out of cars if they park there, right?
That would be helpful.
Yeah, anything we put there would need to be pretty low.
Right, or at least be able to endure people stepping on it.
Correct. Okay.
And keeping in mind that people walk by all the time, they're with their dogs and kids and all kinds of things. So all kinds of things happen there.
So
I heard someone refer to this as a hell strip one time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's time, but do you have a wish list? Did you prepare a wish list?
Nope. You just heard
Okay.
it.
Just in case, I'm assuming the construction on the house specifically is locked in, but is there any room for alterations? Like maybe, for instance, a door, if access to like a new area in the landscape is added.
We made all of our changes to the house. We're not going to
Okay.
change anything else. Nice try.
Are things like home exercise, yoga, meditation, anything like that important to the family?
Yes, but we have a local YMCA, so we go there.
Okay.
From all the plants in the yards and on all sides, is there anything in particular you'd like to get rid of?
Nothing in particular. I mentioned about the trees and the shrubs on the corner and so on. And you know, we're not attached to anything, nor are we opposed to anything. We're just kind of neutral here. We just want the best design possible.
Got it.
With respect to the sidewalk out in front, you had said that it kind of lumps over. Is that the responsibility of the township, or is that something that we would need and want to address?
So I don't think there's anything about it that's gonna be, we would be required to replace it. If we ever did want it to be replaced, it would be our responsibility, but no one's forcing us to do it.
Is it something that's important for you to do, or
Not really.
not really? Got it.
You mentioned you like the handcraft or custom feel of the garden. Is there an example of a garden that you really like in the area?
Well, we're surrounded by them here. Some of our favorites are places like Chanticleer and Mount Cuba and Winterthur. They're fantastic. Longwood Gardens is lovely, but it seems so much out of scale to our tiny little house. So we respond better to those smaller gardens.
Could you explain what's on the little fence? I see like 2 fence posts with a sign in front of it or between them.
Two fence posts with a
right of the sign.
sign.
Oh, no, back on that picture.
I think that's just the construction people's
Yeah.
sign.
Oh, this right here? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the builders. That's the builder's sign. Yeah.
So Danilo, is there anything on site that you absolutely don't want removed? Like, are there certain trees that you love, or is there something about what you have right now that you really are precious about?
No, I think I think we're neither in love with or despise anything in particular on the property. So you know, we just want the best design possible.
What types of family outings do you guys go on?
That's a great question. I don't have a prepared answer for that one. I don't think it's relevant here. I'd be making something up on the spot, and I don't think it's going to influence what we design here. So okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a timeout here. I think you've all asked excellent questions. I'm gonna stop sharing now. There we go. And I think you've got a lot of good information to help you create your program statement. Good job. You really did well in asking deeper, more probing questions. So unless anyone has anything anything to wrap up on something we touched on already, I think we're at a good stopping point, because then the next thing you know is like be asking what my favorite color is or something like that, or my favorite TV show, and we don't need to go there. So anyway, we explained the assignments. I think we're good there. I'll get to work on grading your homework assignments from last week. So I think we're good. Any closing questions or comments before we move on?
I do. What's the approximate square footage of the house?
I think we're about 1,200 square feet,
Thanks.
maybe 14.
Could I ask a question about future homeworks?
Yes.
Are we starting from scratch each time we submit a homework on the trace paper? Okay,
Matter of fact, so each week's assignment this week's assignment will build on the previous week's, right? So it's very much a process-oriented set of assignments that will culminate in the landscape plan.
So if we have something that was just, we felt like was very wrong on our first
Then
thing.
you can change it. You should change it. Yeah. So the question was, you know, is it going to be starting from scratch? Not necessarily. You're going to be building on things. Like some things you're going to like in your plan, and some things I'm going to make some comments and say, you should think about this, and here's why. And then I would expect some changes to be made. But you're not going to be starting over from from scratch each week, right? You'll be building on the previous week's assignment.
Okay.
Sure. Any other questions? You guys are doing great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So with that, we'll close up. Thanks very much. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good
Good
one.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Welcome.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.